the return of the Victoria's Secret runway show.
Can a company as large as Victoria's Secret that has such a problematic past have the opportunity to rebrand and make a comeback?
You guys might have seen that last week was the return of the Victoria's Secret runway show. We've spoken about Victoria's Secrets over the last couple of years. Back in 2021 and 2022, we've done 2 episodes around the rebrand, around the very questionable ethics and culture behind the brand itself. And since 2019, the iconic Victoria's Secret Angels show had been rested because of so much controversy, failing ratings, and also because of how much the brand had dipped in sales and profits because of the controversy that it had received. Now, it has made a comeback and it has really tried to embody this idea of body inclusivity and diversity, a new brand strategy that they have been heralding since 2020. But the question that we have, and there's so many parts of this to unpack, is whether or not that is an authentic brand change and whether or not it's possible for a brand that was so entrenched in diet culture and in like heroing one type of beauty standards for so long, whether or not they're able to make this complete backflip.
Well, back in May, Victoria's Secret had promised that the show would reflect who they are today, plus everything you know and love. So the glamour, the runway, the wings, the musical entertainment, and so much more. Like they put on, if you guys have seen the shows, they're always these really huge, over-the-top productions. What we did see were models of all ages, new models that have never hit the Victoria's Secret runway before. We saw Kate Moss make her debut. You know, Kate Moss is in her 50s. Tyra Banks was there. She closed the show. Tyra Banks was an original Victoria's Secret's model. Now she is also in her 50s. And she is probably now included as quote unquote body diverse because she's a little bit older. She talks about how she's put on weight and she's in a different phase of her life. What we did see though was a very, very pared back version of a Victoria's Secret's runway show. The platform and the runway was on the same level as everyone was seated. There was no big song and dance. All the seating for the guests were on the same level. They were very basic chairs. It was far less over the top. And the purpose of that was supposed to be so that we are looking at the models and what they are wearing, the product, as opposed to it being this show that is purely
like an extravaganza.
Yeah, it's supposed to be so it's not this show that's just for entertainment. I think personally they did that part of it very well.
It's interesting because I don't care so much about the structure of the show. Like, I don't care about the bells and whistles or how the show was put together. What I am so fascinated by is whether or not a brand can completely change the identity. Like the DNA of the brand, whether they can kind of come back from the controversy that they faced. If you guys aren't across it all, so I think it is important to kind of lay down the backstory of this because it goes beyond just being like a brand that's not size inclusive and obviously contributed to so much of the diet culture. There was a lot of really insidious reports that came out of Victoria's Secret. So back in 2019, that was a time when many conversations around Jeffrey Epstein were in media. But to give you the backstory, so Les Wexner, he was the billionaire founder, and Ed Razek, he was the right-hand man of Victoria's Secret. Now, there were so many reports that came out of sexual assault, of sexual abuse. There were reports that came out around the culture of Victoria's Secret, and for any of the models who had came forward, so the angels who had come forward and reported this type of conduct, they had been punished by no longer getting placed within the show. So it was almost a situation where if you came out and you spoke about the treatment that you'd received from within the company,
You'd be punished.
You'd be punished for it. So your career or justice. So Les Wexner, he founded L Brands, which is a global retail empire that includes Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works. He was also the CEO for more than 5 decades of the company. Wexner announced in 2020 that he was going to step down and sell his majority stake in Victoria's Secret for $525 million to a private equity firm. But he didn't sell all of it. So he still profits from Victoria's Secrets in some way. And the reason why he's linked to Jeffrey Epstein is because he was the financial manager and ex-confidant of Les Wexner. So it is like the murkiest, muddiest, most disgusting kind of backstory as to how Victoria's Secret came to be when you look at it with that lens. The thing that's different now, though, and to kind of bring it forward into 2024, is that there is a new CEO of Victoria's Secret, and her name is Hilary Super. She is the former CEO of Rihanna's popular brand, which is Savage. So It's a very, very body conscious and body inclusive brand. And they have placed her as a CEO as a real statement that they are trying to make massive changes as a brand itself.
I think it's amazing that they have appointed her as the head, because without doubt we can say that the problems came from those men that were in charge of Victoria's Secrets at the time. They have made a huge conscious effort to make it very female dominated, and I say that because everyone there was female, all the entertainment was female, like that was a conscious decision from them. But I think the question is now is, can a company as large as Victoria's Secrets that has such a problematic past have the opportunity to rebrand and make a comeback? That's the question that everyone's asking. And from what I have seen online, the discourse is kind of, it's a bit of A, bit of B. There's a bunch of people saying, yes, you've come back, you've nailed it, you've listened.
Oh, I don't know.
And then there's a bunch of people that'll say, we will never forgive and forget what you did, or the messaging that your brand put out to the world 6 years ago. To be honest, I've gone back and forward on my opinion on this, but I do think that I am the former. I think that we can give them the opportunity to make amends and make a change, apologize, say you've listened, and make the improvements that we as a consumer told them that we wanted to see. I don't think we can hold it against a company as a whole. If we know that there are 2-3 really problematic people, we know the messaging wasn't great, but also the messaging was of its time.
Wasn't great.
No,
horrific.
Yes, but it was of its time. That's why it was that. And I hate saying that, but it's remiss not to make that point. It was of its time. That is why this show was so big. But then can we hold it against a brand when we have spoken and they have taken 6 years out, they have done what they think is their best to listen, and they have brought something back? I, in this sense, think that we can show a little bit of forgiveness and say, okay, look, I think they tried to listen.
I think it's interesting because I don't have as much grace for a brand as what I might do for an individual. So like a brand is a profiting company. And I guess my take on the Victoria's Secret is like, I don't have as much grace as what you do, Britt. And I think about it in terms of all of these models that have come on board. Ashley Graham is one of them. And I was following what she was saying on social media because she was one of the real like body inclusive, largest sized women who fronted the catwalk show.
I think she calls herself a plus size model.
She does. I mean, which is like in and of itself, I'm like, some people are okay with using plus size model and some people don't like that terminology, but she does use it.
Yeah, it should just be model.
Model, exactly. But my question is for these women to front this brand, they would have had to have been paid an exorbitant amount of money, right? Because no one in their right fucking mind is putting their name to the brand of Victoria's Secret without being remunerated in a way and without also being shown that there is like tangible long-term change. And I understand that it may be Victoria's Secret's intention to have tangible long-term change. I'm not discrediting that they've got a brand new strategy, but I think their hand was forced to come up with that strategy. They are a publicly listed company where they have massive amounts of shareholders and so many people that are literally reliant on that company being profitable. Their profits were dismal. They had the greatest loss around 2019 when they were forced to make these changes. So I think they were put between a rock and a hard place. They had to change. They had to pivot because they were forced to do so. I don't think it came from this altruistic place of wanting to do it because it was the right thing to do. I think it was a performative thing. And now the blocks of the pieces of the puzzle have fallen into place.
But of course they were forced to change. That's what evolution is. We're all forced to change. Once we put something out to the world, whether it's an opinion, a thought process, a product, we listen to the feedback and we see, oh, okay, that's failing because of this, this, and this. That's what Victoria's Secrets did. To be honest, I don't think the reason matters as much as what they've done to fix it. But I have grace for people and companies who have made a mistake and then are actively trying to fix it after listening to feedback, because everybody is human. Everybody is going to make mistakes, but it's what they do as a company or an individual to try and rectify that problem. And I personally think whether you are across and for Victoria's Secrets in terms of the idea of that we have a show dedicated to women walking a runway in lingerie, like maybe you don't like that at all, maybe you do. For me...
Oh, I don't have a problem with women walking in lingerie.
Sorry,
I think that's great.
I'm not saying you, I'm saying the listener, but anyone, whether you have... Because there are a lot of people that think that we shouldn't even be doing this. At the end of the day, I think it's another product that we're modeling. So it doesn't bother me at all having a runway dedicated to lingerie and sleepwear and sexy things like that. I don't care about that. But Do you think that we are too hard on people when they make their apologies or when they try to make their comeback? Because Victoria's Secrets, in my eyes, I looked at them and I'm like, okay, you've now toned the show back. You've taken all the glamour out. You don't have the fantasy bra anymore because no one actually buys it. You don't have the extravagant wings anymore because it was irrelevant. You've got products that people buy. You've put inclusivity in there in terms of diversity, transgender models. You have models in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. You have models of color. And there's still people complaining. There's just a part of me that thinks, okay, you guys have told them what your issues are. They've made changes, but it's still not enough. And I do think sometimes we get to a point where we're just out with our pitchforks, and sometimes it will never be enough.
Yeah, I think a brand that has done that much damage, that has such a seedy past, where the ex-founder and CEO of 5 decades still profits from it, I don't think it's a brand that we should be putting our money towards when there are so many other brands that consumers can choose, when you can literally be buying your lingerie products from Rihanna. I think it is a very, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the change isn't tangible. I'm not saying that they're doing everything that they can possibly do now to be presented as a diverse brand. Their profit share's gone up by 18% this year alone. So it's definitely working for them. It was a smart and tactical move. Do I think it comes from an altruistic place and that they are a company that I want to forgive and put my money into? Absolutely not. And the reason for that is because I think that the damage that that brand did to diet culture is so long stemming. Look, I don't normally believe in cancel culture. I think that a lot of people can come back from it. Do I think that a brand that is directly involved with Jeffrey Epstein, that has had such a long-term impact on the way women feel about their bodies, should have the opportunity to rebrand? I don't really think that they should. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, but I also agree with that. That's not the question. That's not what we're talking about. Of course, we don't think that somebody that was accused of sexual assault and bullying and harassment should be profiting. We didn't even know that until yesterday, until we researched this. People, the general public, don't know he's still attached, which is a problem in itself, right? We are all made to believe that he had left the building. It was taken over by a new bunch of people who really cared about giving back and making the right changes. To be clear, of course, people in that industry shouldn't still be profiting, and that upsets me greatly. I don't personally buy from Victoria's Secrets, but my question that I'm posing is not about that as much. It is about, can somebody from 6 years ago who was what we see as problematic and not putting out the great messaging, do we give them the grace to rebrand, or do we hold that against them for the rest of their life?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that there's a few interesting parts of this. And Ashley Graham, who is someone who I love following on Instagram, I think she is brilliant in the way she speaks and I love her messaging. She obviously spearheaded the catwalk show and she posted this, which I can only imagine when you are someone who stands for body inclusivity and then you've made the choice to represent a brand like Victoria's Secret, you know that it could come with backlash, right?
For sure.
So you need to be very clever and very careful with how you craft your PR exposure, response, announcement that you're joining a brand like this.
Especially when 6-7 years ago, you were a voice saying that this is not okay.
Absolutely. So this is what she said. When Victoria's Secret first reached out, I'll be honest, I hesitated. Well, thank God for that. For years, the brand didn't feel like it was made for someone like me. Their vision of beauty seemed narrow, as if something they created was just for one type of body, and it wasn't mine. But after sitting down with the leadership at Victoria's Secret, I saw real change. They were excited to have me join the show and assured me this wasn't just a one-time thing. The curve models weren't just a symbol. Victoria's Secret genuinely want to be a part of the body diversity revolution. They shared their commitment to embracing body diversity in a lasting, meaningful way. So I said yes. I said yes to representing all of us, to show up for everybody that's ever felt unseen, and that's a journey I am proud to walk. Now, that is very powerful. That type of celebrity endorsement goes a really, really long way in changing your mentality around a brand and around what a brand stands for. And I guess I do come back to this idea that I think that they have made great steps. They have put the right women in leadership positions to create a brand that stands for something different to what it used to stand for. I just don't think that we can completely negate the history of a brand when there's so many other options and so many other people that you can put your money towards. I know that I, as a consumer, would prefer to choose a small business, a small company, a female-led startup where I know that the money is going towards something that always had the intention of doing good in the world rather than creating the situation and the conversation that Victoria's Secret did for so long.
Well, so as someone, Laura, that's followed Ashley Graham for so long, like you said, you've loved following her along for a while. How did you feel as someone that sort of knows her story, respects her, loves her, when she made that statement? What did you think? Were you like, bullshit, you're being paid a lot, or were you like, this is great?
No, I thought, wow, they must have paid you a lot of money.
Right.
I was like, wow, Victoria's Secret has huge pockets in order to make this rebrand work. That's what I thought. And the people that they have on board are some incredible talent who I think a lot of people have deep and great respect for. And the only reason why that talent, it's probably twofold. I'm not saying it's just money, but it is because of this new CEO, Hilary Super, who people obviously have trust for. That's why she's been put in the position of CEO, to create trust with the brand. But I would also say that there is a massive monetary part of this, which is part of this creating a rebrand.
Yeah, I also
They go hand in hand.
Yeah, but I think too, if you've dedicated your life, like let's use Ashley Graham, to being a body inclusive model whose messaging is to make everyone feel comfortable, you're fighting to be seen on the runway so that people like you feel seen. There's obviously going to be a really huge part of you that's like, okay, I know what their past is, but I have fought for this moment. So who am I then to say no? If a brand has come as big as Victoria's Secret saying we are making changes and we want you to be a part of this new chapter, it'd be pretty hard to say no when you're like, okay, I've fought for this for so long, then they come and offer it to me and I say no. I can understand why, money aside, no doubt she got paid a matter, but money aside, I can understand why she's like, yeah, I do want to be known to have been one of the first body inclusive models to hit the runway for Victoria's Secrets. I get that. I get wanting to really put what you've worked so hard for so many years into play.
My only question to you, Britt, is like, now that you do know a bit more about the backstory, so now that you know...
Yes, I will walk the runway for the right money.
No. Now that you know that like a company that for so long buried sexual harassment reports, profited off the power imbalance between men and women within that company, now that you know that the man who spearheaded that for so long still profits from the brand, it's really hard to find clear information about how much of it he actually sold and how much he still owns.
Which would be intentional.
Exactly. But you can still see that there is a portion of it that he still lays claim to. I would say that the sentiment and his values are deeply, deeply entrenched and that he hasn't had this massive rebrand, hence why he walked away from it. Do you think that that's a company you want to continue to support when at the end of the day, the money from that still goes and ends up in the pockets of the person who created these values to begin with?
To be honest, this is an easy answer for me. No, I never have really supported Victoria's Secrets, not for anything other than I liked other products better. Like before all of this came out and all of these allegations, I wasn't a Victoria's Secret
I was
girl.
always confused as to why it was such a popular brand. I didn't get it.
It was a very overseas brand. It's a very US-based brand. And like obviously there's a lot of other countries, but here in Australia it didn't hit as hard. Like Victoria's Secret's clothing stores and actual retail stores were few and far between. I remember there was one at the airport and that was it, you know. No, the answer is no. I don't want to give back to somebody that still profits from that. If he was no longer a part of it and this was a whole new rebrand that was women-owned, new people, then yeah, I don't have a problem with it because I truly do believe we're allowed to rectify our past mistakes. You know, if the past mistakes in this sense were not Victoria's Secrets directly, but the people that were managing it, we all wear lingerie, we all wear underwear. I do think it's okay, but I'm never going to give my money back to somebody that was involved in sexual harassment when he's still profiting. No.